The BRICS Summit in China's southeastern Xiamen City in Fujian Province has just wrapped up. The annual gathering of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Korea is a beacon of hope for emerging markets and developing countries, as it aims to provide an alternative to the Bretton Woods institutions. As this year's host, Chinese President Xi Jinping again stressed the need to avoid protectionism. But he also spoke of the need for new-value global chains and a rebalancing of globalization. To discuss how the BRICS plan to do that and the outcomes of the summit, we are joined in the studio by He Weiwen, Senior Fellow of the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies of Renmin University, and He Wenping, Senior Research Fellow of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. We are also joined by satellite from Shanghai by Charles Tang, Chairman of the Brazil-China Chamber of Commerce and Industry. That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. But before we get started, let's take a look at this.
A stronger partnership for a brighter future. At the press conference by Chinese President Xi Jinping, he praised the consensus reached and achievements made BRICS member countries during the summit. She said that BRICS countries should deepen coordination on important global matters and quicken global economic governance reform.
We BRICS leaders believe the world today is undergoing profound and complex changes. While the world economic outlook is improving, all sorts of global challenges continue to emerge. As nations with major influence, BRICS countries must set up communication and coordination on important issues and work for a more equitable international order.
As the new pillar emerged as the new driving force of BRICS cooperation, people-to-people and cultural exchanges, tremendous progress had been made this year with tangible activities and results.
We BRICS leaders believe that the long history and splendid culture of our respective countries are our valued assets and must be cherished. This year had seen flourishing people-to-people exchanges and cooperation among our 5 countries. Colorful events like the BRICS Games Film Festival, Cultural Festival, high-level meeting, and traditional medicine have proved popular with our people. We are also advancing cooperation between our legislatures, political parties, think tanks, young people, and local authorities to create platforms for people with different backgrounds to participate in BRICS cooperation. We support efforts to institutionalize people-to-people exchanges, as they will contribute to greater mutual understanding and friendship, and base the idea of partnership on more solid public support.
Xi also said that BRICS has strengthened cooperation within the UN and other multilateral institutions through regular meetings among the permanent representatives in New York, Geneva, and Vienna. And at the beginning of the next golden decade for development, BRICS should further enhance solidarity among emerging markets and developing nations.
Do you think multilateralism is a keyword in promoting our better understanding about the functions, role and importance of BRICS, while most observers in the West hold a skeptical view about the importance of a BRICS bloc? China and Russia, for example, attach a considerable amount of importance to this organization. Do you think China allegedly wants to use, for example, Belt and Road Initiative as well as the BRICS bloc to advance its own influence, as the American media put it wisely?
Well, it's not just advance China's own agenda. Actually, from those Xiamen declaration, I haven't heard this One Belt, One Road within this declaration, because this is a collective platform. It's not only China there, so it has other 4 countries. Now with this Xiamen summit, we have used another called the BRICS Plus, so which means now including other 5 partners as well. All those other 5 partners, I pay attention to, it's coming from different continents, together with those members of those BRICS countries, like Mexico, like together with Brazil, like Thailand, together with India and China, and also like Egypt and Guinea from Africa. It goes to, but all are developing countries. Not single one is developed.
Exactly, that's my follow-up question for Mr. He. For the first time, noteworthy is the absence of all major Western industrial nations, either European Union or the United States. None of that, neither has shown up as either participant or observer. What do you think of the significance of having this regional bloc. I mean, it's not regional bloc, but multilateral bloc to further feature the prominence of China as well as other major emerging markets?
I think that's absolutely necessary. Why? We should always call developed countries to join in. We developing countries should get together and discuss our own interests and coordinate our common stance to talk with the developed countries. You see, we already have had such experiences. For instance, Group of 77, that's all developing countries. And also non-alliance movement, also developing countries. So I think BRICS Plus is a good platform advancing the interests of developing and new emerging industries, economies.
Wenping, do you see the BRICS bloc as an alternative to the Bretton Woods, which was set up in the wake of the Second World War? And do you think the vision and ambition of Mr. Xi Jinping and his counterparts within the BRICS bloc would improve, if not reform seriously, the existing world economic order, so that we would be able to promote an equitable order and the spirit of inclusiveness instead of rejecting the latecomers such as China and India in the framework of IMF?
Yes, I agree. I agree this kind of words is alternative you used. It's not a replacement of this Bretton Woods institution set up after the end of Second World War, because this existing world economic and political order, even though it's not so perfect, even though it's a lot of flaws there, but we are not going to destroy it or trying to use another in order to replace it. So it's just complementary with each other. And also AIIB, this Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, is not trying to replace the World Bank or International Monetary Fund.
Or ADB.
Yes, it's just a tool complemented with those existing banks. So similar, this I think this the BRICS platform. It's a platform put those emerging markets, those countries together. So that's why I think it's no need saying now we expanded this to the developed economy. So because the developed economy, they have been already there. They have the G7, and for those developing and developed countries together, there is another platform there. It's called the G20. So you don't need to have another one to copy exactly another existing one. So this one has its unique feature. That is, developing country and emerging country now needs the way, followed with other developing countries.
The keynote policy presentation that Mr. Xi Jinping delivered at the host in Xiamen emphasized overwhelmingly the importance of fighting trade protectionism in line with the spirit of, for example, promoting an equitable world economic order. What do you mean? What do you think of his appeal?
I think this is of top importance. The growth of world economy and the balance of interests among different parts of the world cannot be achieved without a globalization, without a multilateral trading system, without a free trade. So it is of top importance to defend multilateral trading system and defend globalization, especially at the backdrop of the Donald Trump's anti-globalization and an American first policies. That's of top importance at the moment.
Let me go to Charles Tang, who's standing by in Shanghai via satellite. Hello, Charles.
Yeah, hi.
What do you think of the highlights of the Xiamen Declaration?
No, I think that the BRICS, the creation of BRICS from Jim O'Neill's acronym of the 4 countries with the greatest potential for growth still holds true, joined by South Africa and expanded with the BRICS Plus. And I think that it will be a very formidable group. I think that the dividing line was in 2014 when the new development bank was announced, because it gave a practical instrument to implement a lot of the wishes and hopes of the emerging nations. Now, it was very necessary because, in Bretton Woods in 1944, the victorious nations founded the world financial system, but the creditor nations such as China, Russia, and Brazil and so on, never really had a voice in this international monetary system. Now, why must the president of the World Bank always be an American? Why must the president of the IMF always be a European and the IB Japanese? So I think that, you know, the emerging nations have their own interests that are not always comprehended by the developed countries. And I don't see, of course, there is no wish to replace the existing Bretton Woods world financial system, but I think that the new development bank and the AIB, plus the funds that are being set up, investment funds for infrastructure development, will certainly complement and attend more specifically to the needs of the developing world. And I think that this grouping of countries will probably, with the plus, you know, expanding with 5 other countries, like Mexico. I was in a conference where I was a speaker in a conference called BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, Mexico, and South Africa. So I think that this would enlarge the potential and the needs of the emerging nations by people who really understand what it is to be an emerging nation today.
Yes, indeed. The special grouping of stakeholders such as Brazil, China, Africa, South Africa will play an increasingly important role in reshaping or rebalancing globalization, while the United States beats retreat from NAFTA, the transatlantic relationship, or TPP. Now, having said this, how important is it for China to inject up to $500 million into a special fund to assist with the South-South cooperation, Mr. He?
This is, I think,
because there was a dialogue between emerging markets and developing countries on the sidelines of the BRICS Summit this time around.
Yes, I think this is, of course, it's practical, important of the real support with 500 million. Anyway, this is only the start, and we'll continue to inject more. And the most important thing is not an amount, but the model. That means that China is willing to contribute to kick off the cooperation, new type of cooperation between the BRICS countries and other developing countries for the real tangible results.
Many media observers keep asking whether this BRICS Summit is indeed a big success, given the fact that at the beginning of the summit, the DPRK detonated yet another nuclear bomb, and China and India were just able to solve peacefully the border crisis in Doklam between China and India. At the same time, Jacob Zuma of South Africa just survived the biggest and the most devastating no-confidence vote in his own country. President Michel Temer of Brazil was accused of corruption. I mean, if you put these things, negative headline-making stories together into one perspective, this BRICS Summit opened against a very difficult background. What do you think of the prospects? Do you think this summit meeting in Xiamen was only the end of a beginning?
Oh, of course, it's a very important summit because it shows the end of the first 10 years, but it will kick off the next coming 10 years. All those facts you mentioned, of course, give us a very complicated picture, which means it's badly needed this BRICS again, because this BRICS, because it's opening, and then even the China-India border issue now can be calmed down for a while, but it also shows now the BRICS summit not only can just focus on economic cooperation issue, That's not enough at all. So it have to embrace other those contents like peace building, like security cooperation, and also we talk about this people-to-people exchange. Because Chinese, India, I don't think we know each other very well. You travel to India. I've been there twice, but I don't think it's easier for me to get a visa. So when I got another invitation letter just not long ago, I feel hesitated to go there, thinking about this complicated process of this visa applying. So it didn't encourage me, but rather to make me drop that idea to go there. So that's one of the hurdles for the two Chinese and the Indians to do more communication. So I think in the future, in order to strengthen this P2P, people-to-people contact, I think we need to smooth those visa procedure. That's the one idea I mentioned too. So back to the security one. So the DPRK issue, nuclear bomb testing, and also China-India one. Plus, who knows in the future, maybe other security threat coming out. So we badly need the BRICS to set up some kind of mechanism, to trying to resolve them. When you're talking about how to maintain the world peace and the world security, but if you cannot resolve the member disputes within your own, and then you lost your those speaking power even to talking about how to address others. So I think this is a challenge for BRICS country. Now I heard a very urgent issue. This Xiamen Declaration, I heard at least 26 items within those lengthy declaration. Now 26 of them items has been focused on this security issue. So which means those things you cannot ignore. We start addressing on the security, and then it's not easy to push for those economic cooperation. Think about if we China, India, if we have a war. So all those economic cooperation, you cannot be bring on the table anymore.
Are you suggesting clearly that regarding the issue of people-to-people exchanges, Kamira Khan, the superstar from Bollywood, should have been sent here as a special envoy to help ease the tensions between China and India, because he is so popular with the millions of Chinese moviegoers. Yeah. But anyway, what do you think of our concerns on security, which was also listed prominently in the joint declaration?
I think from this point, we can see that BRICS mechanism has taken a big step forward as from the very beginning 10 years ago. Now we cover not only the economic cooperation among the 5 BRICS nations, but also cooperation with the more developing countries, and for globalization, for global governance. That's more, and above that, we are also playing a major role in maintaining world security and peace and regional hot issues, even counter-terrorism and also Paris Accord for climate change. I think so BRICS mechanism has moved a big step up the ladder to be a major platform for world peace and global governance.
Mr. He, as an economist, what do you think of the resilience and dynamics of these emerging markets, since China assumes an apparent leadership within the BRICS bloc in terms of its economic size, and yet Russia, South Africa have both underperformed remarkably. Therefore, here is the allegation that the shine of BRICS is starting to fade into insignificance.
Of course, we have troubles. That is an increasing imbalance of the economic weight between China and the other 4 members, and also the imbalance between India and the other 3 members. 10 years ago, when BRICS, the total amount of the GDP of the 5 nations was around $6 trillion, and China accounted for 45 of the total of the 5. And last year, the total size was about $16.8 trillion, 5 nations, and China accounted for 2/3 of the total. In other words, China's economic size is twice the other 4 members combined. And for the rest of 4 members, India accounted for 40%. So Brazil, Russia, and South Africa have been moving more slowly. And the average, of course, they have come back to the track of growth, moderate growth. But according to the estimate by IMF, the growth rate for the three countries will be lower than the world average for the next 5 years. That means their share in the world total economy will be declined further. So in this sense, China, I think, first of all, we should not be that self-sufficient, self-conceit, say, we are big, we are small. We don't have that idea. Countries or economies, big or small, are equal. And also we firmly believe Brazil, Russia, and South Africa each has great potentials, great vast resources. As long as they could do a good job at home for restructuring their industries, for catch up with the Industrial Revolution, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things, and ICT, so on and so forth, which has been expressed in the joint declaration and also in the repeated discussions. I think that all the 5 countries can move together. We can coordinate. I think the future still holds good for all our 5 member countries.
We appreciate your rosy picture about the prospects of the BRICS bloc. Let me go back to Charles. Ideologically, it seems. Ideologically, Charles, it seems public opinions across the broad spectrum among and between member states of a BRICS bloc is seriously divided between Beijing consensus and the Washington consensus. At the same time, on the surface, it seems that China and India contribute up to 60% of the world economic recovery, but Russia, Brazil, and South Africa lag way behind the 2 leading economies. So what do you think of this issue of discrepancy in terms of its sustainable growth together in close partnership?
Well, I believe that, China has joined the world value chain and supply chain with its manufacturing, gigantic, becoming a factory to the world. India, of course, is a great exporter of, IT technology and software and so on, and also pharmaceutical products, and also joined the world value chain and supply chain. Brazil, Russia, and South Africa basically depended more on the export of their commodities and petroleum. And with the boom of the commodity prices, these countries, had faced the boom, enjoyed the boom. And with the drop in the prices, these countries, of course, suffered from this drop of prices. Now, the personal problems faced by the president of South Africa and the president of Brazil, I don't think that really has much impact on the future or the capacity of these countries to unite and become even, a group that can help counterbalance the world dominance by the G7 countries. I think that with the other countries joining the group, I think that eventually overtake the G7. And it's good for the world that not everything is dictated by the developed nations, and that finally the emerging nations are having a stronger voice. We can see before our eyes a complete change in the world governance and in the world order, not only because of the, let's say, visionary and initiatives and bold initiatives taken by the government of President Xi Jinping, but also because of the retreat from the world scenario by President Trump of the United States. And I think that China is being thrust into a world leadership position.
But the problem is whether China is ready to assume the alleged global leadership. That's a big question mark. Having said this, while the rest of the world keeps a close eye on the performance of the post-Olympic economic growth in Brazil, as well as the political storms in your country, we also notice that Prime Minister Modi had just reshuffled his cabinet right before setting out for the BRICS Summit in Xiamen. He was attempting to regain public confidence after a disastrous demonstration scheme. What do you think of the resilience of the Indian economy? Charles.
I think that India has its problems, but I think India has enjoying a very fast growth rate. And I believe, Brazil is such a wealthy country that once we get over these hurdles, this political crisis, Brazil will grow again. And President Temer, despite his political problems, has taken steps to free Brazil of the chains that tied it down for so many decades. Like he overhauled the labor laws of Brazil, which were so costly to all the companies, and created so much informal jobs. He wants to overhaul the fiscal structure of Brazil, which is also very, very a gigantic cost to any company in Brazil. And by overhauling the retirement structure, the pension structure of Brazil, it will also free up a lot of capital for the government to utilize in better manners.
Thank you very much, Charles, for briefing us on the resilience and potential of the Brazilian economy. Mr. He, what do you think of the Indian economy after Prime Minister Modi has reformed its monetary system, particularly the taxation reform? Do you think he's able to rally the whole country behind him in this against, a lot of the social problems, such as ethnic tensions, as well as caste system, and different levels of economic development in the states of in economy, such as his home state of Gujarat, and rioting broke out before he embarked on his journey to Xiamen.
I think, yes, that's true. That India really has a lot of internal troubles. And Prime Minister Modi has been working very hard trying to calm down those contradictions and try to move the country forward. And of course, Indian economic performances have been very good over the past few years, even higher. The growth rate was even higher than China. But I think that India has some concerns. First, its manufacturing base is still relatively weak. It's good at IT, at information services, at some high technologies. Still, its industrial base is not good. The manufacturing sector, the share in total economy is very low.
But India does boast of a very young labor force.
I think the advantage of India, one of the advantages is abundant supply of young laborers.
Exactly.
And well educated. That's an extremely important advantage.
And
still, we'll have to wait and see whether that will turn into a real advantage in the modern manufacturing sector.
And most well-educated Indians could speak very good English, although I find it difficult to understand the Indian English accent. The last question is very much about climate change. Very quickly, Wenping, China, India, and parts of Africa have suffered badly from record-breaking rains and floods. Several Latin American countries have offered help to the southern U.S. states hit by Hurricane Harvey. While the United States has withdrawn from the Paris Climate Accord, the countries most likely to be affected first by climate change are the developing nations. What do you think of this issue? Why did the BRICS Summit also address this issue of common concern?
Well, I think it is absolutely right for the BRICS country now holding this flag very high, that is anti this climate change, because we all know that President Trump now has been make a withdrawal from this Paris Agreement. So I think this is quite selfish attitude. So, I don't care about climate change, global warming at all, as long as
America first.
Yes, as long as we enjoy the blue sky, that's okay. I don't want to pay any fee for those green fund given by the UN. So this is a selfish thing. This planet is just one. Even today you enjoy the blue sky, maybe tomorrow.
Global warming does, does top the agenda of developing countries in particular. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue. Thank you for being with us. See you next time. Goodbye.